So we understand the importance of an economy of scale. We understand the importance of going after a large market. A third and very important thing is, if you've got 50, 100 ideas that are at that 1 minute stage, you've just written the idea down at the napkin, and you recognize that it takes a minute to write something down, it takes years to turn something into a profitable business. When you recognize this, you actually recognize something that's not obvious, which is that you will actually be doing market sizing calculations over and over and over again. Every single time you add a new feature to your product, every time you pivot your business slightly, every time you think about which customer group to go after next, you're doing market sizing calculations. And you start getting really good at this, and that's why it's not obvious. You might think, oh, doesn't this business only go after 2 or 3 markets? But they entertained dozens, if not hundreds of them, before focusing on the 2 or 3 that you actually see. So getting good at market sizing is important. The other thing that is important, especially for anybody who's in like a PhD program or a grad program of some kind, is if you have two concepts that are equivalently scientifically interesting, don't wait 6 years before doing your first market sizing calculation. A lot of PhD students do this and they think, okay, it's important in academia, therefore it must be important in the real world. That's only very weakly correlated, if at all. This diagram sort of explains it. If you work in, say, C. elegans genome sequencing versus human genome sequencing, these are roughly equivalent scientific novelty. You can get science papers or nature papers on both of them, but human genome sequencing is a much larger market size. Now, it is true that you can have things like Facebook, which go from a small market to a very large market, but even those, they were ultimately targeted at humans at first. You could imagine under some scenario that these became large. The scenario in which C. elegans becomes large is something usually where it's intermediate, where there's some human stage, some human experiment. If you've thought that through and you think that, yes, it could become a large market, more power to you, go for it. Then it doesn't belong down here. But in general, if you're going to spend 6 years on something, it is useful to distinguish between those kinds of things which are academically prestigious versus those kinds of things which are useful to the world and that someone will actually pay money for. They are surprisingly less correlated than one might think, and you only really realize that at the end of one's PhD program. So that'd be the advice I'd give if one was a grad student or just starting a graduate program.